So this is another picture, number 20B, just to show you a better picture or a closer picture of a gyre. So you can see these circular areas where the water is just continuously circulated, and these are going to be deeper ocean currents due to density from the water getting warm at the equator, and then moving to an area where it's going to be cooler, so it sinks. And then it warms up and it rises, and then it kind of continues in that circular pattern. Number 21, the Coriolis effect. So because of the spinning of the Earth, you have the Coriolis effect occur. So the Coriolis effect is just saying that the rotation of the Earth is going to affect the movement of air and water. It allows air and water to curve in a specific location. So in the northern hemisphere, you're going to have the air getting deflected in a specific direction, and this is going to affect any type of fluid, so it can be air or water. So if you have movement of fluids coming from the poles, it's going to move in this kind of direction towards the equator, and if it's coming from the direction of the equator, it's going to be moving up like that to the right. And then from the equator, from the South Pole in the southern hemisphere, if you have fluids, air or water, that are moving in a straight direction going up, then it's going to be turning to the left. If it's coming from the equatorial region, it's going to be curving like that. So basically, from the pole, you're going to have this movement of air or water that's being directed towards the equator in this direction, in the north, and in the south. It's going to be coming like this. So that can impact air currents and wind, and can also affect ocean currents. Number 22, this is looking at the atmospheric layers. So troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, thermosphere. The troposphere is the layer that we live in. It's the area where we have weather, and the temperature is going to decrease with altitude. So as you go higher up in the troposphere, it's going to get colder. The stratosphere, strata means layer, and its temperature is going to increase with altitude. Jet planes are found in this layer, and also the most important thing is ozone layer. So we have the ozone layer in the stratosphere. The ozone layer is comprised of ozone, which is a molecule of 3 oxygen atoms bonded together. CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons, are what are contributing to the hole in the ozone layer. So if you have a question asking you about that, CFCs, which come from basically aerosols, like aerosol sprays, that's bad. There are also other things besides aerosol contributing to that, like different types of refrigerants and things like that. But the chlorofluorocarbons are what's contributing to the hole in the ozone layer, which will allow for increased UV radiation to reach down in the troposphere. Mesosphere, meso means middle. Mesosphere is going to be the coldest layer, and it's going to be the layer where you have meteors burning up. So when you see shooting stars, you can think the mesosphere. Thermosphere is going to be the hottest layer. Its temperature is going to reach about 1500 degrees, but it wouldn't feel that hot because the air molecules are going to be spread further apart and aren't going to have that friction between them. So it has the ionosphere, which is responsible for causing the auroras, like the aurora borealis, and the exosphere, and past that is space. Number 9, which is associated with the increase of chlorofluorocarbons in the environment. An increase in health risk associated with UV radiation. I wonder why. Because it's causing a hole in the ozone layer. So it's not going to be an increase of methane gas. That would basically be, methane gas is basically due to cows pooping and farting, honestly. An increase in ozone levels in the upper atmosphere is not going to cause more ozone to appear further up in the atmosphere. Increase in acid precipitation, no. Number 23, the primary gas in the atmosphere, nitrogen, 78%, oxygen to a lesser extent, but also very important, 21%. 24, what's the primary pollutant in our atmosphere? Greenhouse gases. And the specific one that's really problematic is carbon dioxide. And we know that increased carbon dioxide is coming from the burning of fossil fuels because we rely way too much on fossil fuels for energy, and burning fossil fuels, coal, oil, and natural gas is going to release a lot of carbon dioxide. And the problem with that is that it releases way too much carbon dioxide that the earth can't recover from that. We don't have enough plants, vegetation, trees, phytoplankton in the ocean to take out that carbon from the atmosphere. Oceans also act as a carbon sink, which means that oceans are going to readily absorb a lot of carbon dioxide, and that's because ocean water comes in contact with the air. And so that's one reason why dissolved carbon dioxide is one of the most abundant gases, in addition to oxygen, that's dissolved into water. So that increase in the amount of carbon dioxide that's dissolving into the ocean is going to lower the pH of the ocean, contributing to ocean acidification. Number 25, air masses. So an air mass is just going to be a section of air, a large body of air that has similar characteristics. So it's going to have similar temperature, humidity, and pressure. And the four main types of air masses that affect the United States are listed right here. So continental, polar. Continental is referring to being over land. Polar is referring to having a cooler temperature as coming from the poles. Continental, tropical, so over the land, but also has a lot of warmth with it. Maritime, polar, is going to be over the water, but also cold. And then maritime, tropical, is going to be over the water, but also is going to be warm. So it's going to carry moisture, warm moisture, basically. Number 26, fronts are a boundary that separates two air masses. And we see the image here with our frontal boundary symbols. So you can take a look at those and make sure you review over those as well. What type of weather is associated with a cold front? So when you have a cold front, you're going to have thunderheads that can form. So you're going to have cumulonimbus clouds that are going to have this kind of thunderhead shape to it. And then afterwards, you're going to have fair, kind of cool weather. What type of weather is associated with a warm front? When you have a warm front, you're most likely going to have gentle rain or light snow, just depending on the particular temperature of that area. So it's going to be either, if it's warmer, rain, or colder, it's going to be snow. And then you'll have mild, warm weather after that. 27 was climate. So the big thing here is to differentiate between weather and climate. So weather is what we experience every day, short term, and then climate is long term. Climate is an average of what takes place in that location over years and years. So from basically all the data that has been historically gathered. So weather conditions over a long period of time is going to be what climate is. And this image is just showing you some of the different climate zones basically around the world. So you can see that we live more in a moderate, humid, subtropical kind of climate zone. What are the three major climate zones in the world? Well, we have polar, so that's the pink areas, tropical, which is right here around the equator, so our equatorial region, and then temperate is the yellow. What are two examples of factors that can cause climate to change naturally? So the amount of solar energy that's reaching the earth, and then volcanic activity. So those are two things that can affect temperatures globally that naturally occur. List 2 greenhouse gases emitted by humans and tell where they come from, and describe how these gases can impact the environment. So carbon dioxide is the big one that's going to be causing a lot of problems for us because it is being rampantly emitted into the air. So carbon dioxide is a natural gas. We breathe out carbon dioxide, but we are emitting it at such a rate that the environment can't recover from that because we're putting way too much carbon dioxide into the air from the burning of fossil fuels. So carbon dioxide acts like a heat trapping blanket. That's the best analogy that I can give you. It acts like a a blanket around the earth. So if you wrap a blanket around you, you'll warm up. So carbon dioxide acts like a blanket around the earth, warms up the earth. It traps heat. Methane is another greenhouse gas, and it can trap 20% more heat than carbon dioxide, but it's not being emitted at such a rampant rate. It does come from mining coal and from livestock, and basically when cows, when any organism, right, like poops or releases gas, it's going to include methane in it. So that methane is going to go into the atmosphere. So methane can be problematic from areas where you have a lot of agriculture and farm animals specifically. Number 31, what's a biome? So biomes are geographic areas that are classified based on the plants and animals that live there. So they're based on the characteristics of that particular region, the weather of the region, and the specific plants and animals that live in those regions. So one major thing that classifies a biome is going to be temperature and moisture. So, like for example, when you see the word rainforest, you probably think about like tropical animals and lemurs and toucans and iguanas and things like that. And those are animals that can live in rainforest areas, like here in South America. And that's the kind of the dark green area here, and then here in Africa. So animals that are in this tropical rainforest region are going to be able to live in areas where there's lots of rain and also lots of moisture. So like when I was in Belize, which is down here, there was a lot of moisture in the air. It was basically like 100% humidity, and there was lots of tropical vegetation and lots of flowers and trees, heliconia, things like that, and lots of different types of animals that would be associated with those areas. So monkeys and jaguars and tons of iguanas and things like that. So animals, plants that are suited to those areas. 32, what are the 5 major biomes around the world? Aquatic, so we have freshwater and saltwater. Desert is going to be where you don't have a lot of rainfall. It's going to be pretty dry. Forests, temperate forests or tropical forests. Grasslands, savanna areas like in Africa. And tundra is going to be the coldest regions. 33, carrying capacity. So carrying capacity is just the amount of organisms that can be supported in a particular habitat based on resource availability. So access to water, shelter, food. How does this relate to population growth? If the carrying capacity is exceeded, the population is going to begin to decline. So if you have too many organisms that are trying to live in a particular area, you're going to have an increase of competition, and the animals are going to start fighting over food. So like the lions aren't going to share like their food, right? They're going to fight it out, and somebody's going to end up dying. So that's what you see happening in this picture here. This blue line represents the carrying capacity, and when you have an overshoot of the population, there's too many organisms for that habitat to hold, then it starts going down because stuff starts dying either from competition, or it could be dying from lack of resources and like it starves because it can't get the food that it needs. Which best describes the relationship between carrying capacity and Earth's resources? Population that is above carrying capacity is going to end up having a decrease in natural resources because all of those animals are going to be trying to get all of those, the food and the water that's available. 34, how can invasive species negatively impact a biome? So an invasive species is not going to be native to that area. So invasive species a lot of times are going to spread rapidly. They're going to have natural predators because they're in a new habitat. They're in an area where they don't naturally live. So like Burmese pythons in the Everglades in Florida, for example, people get these pets, they get pet snakes, and they're like, oh, it's a cute snake. I'm going to have it as a pet, and I'm going to look all cool and everything. And then they realize, oh, well, Burmese pythons can get to be like 15 feet long, and I don't have anywhere to put a snake that's 15 feet long. And P.S., what am I going to feed it? So they set the snake loose, and they're like, good luck. And so the snakes end up going to try and figure out their way of life here in the United States. And in Florida, a lot of them end up accumulating in the Everglades because they're tropical snakes and it's warm in Florida and there's lots of water. And so then you end up having snakes that are trying to eat alligators or deer or Burmese pythons hanging out in people's backyards. So climate change can impact invasive species. So, for example, pythons. So, with our current climate situation, pythons can be living up here in the green area, maybe in the yellow. But if with continued changed climate, you're going to have an increased in the area where they'll be able to live in the United States. So you're going to have them being able to move further north in the United States. So maybe one of these days you'll see Burmese pythons hanging out in your yard.